Civil disobedience in Sudan. People are protesting against unprecedented price hikes and fuel subsidy cuts. But how much of a threat is the rising popular anger in this country? And how is the Sudanese government dealing with it? This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to the program. I'm Hazem Seeker. Everything is bad. That is how one human rights activist in Sudan describes life there. President Omar al-Bashir just raised fuel prices across the country to curb inflation. Medicine and electricity costs have been on the rise for the past few years, and the people say they are fed up. Many have launched a civil disobedience campaign. Neighborhoods across the capital, Khartoum, and other cities were said to be quiet as people boycotted shops and schools. Most of Sudan's opposition parties have supported the protest. They say they want President Bashir to step down. But the government has responded by arresting more than a dozen activists and shutting down local media. As we mentioned, the Sudanese economy is at the root of these problems, and the problem began when South Sudan gained its independence more than 5 years ago and took most of the country's oil resources with it. Fighting in many parts of Sudan, including Darfur, make it even harder to stabilize the economy. And the US has imposed extensive sanctions over allegations of support for certain armed groups and human rights violations. As a result, nearly half of Sudan lives below the poverty line. That's according to the United Nations. And around 3 million children are reported to be starving. Well, let's introduce our panel now. In Khartoum, we have Rubia Abdal'Aati. He is the representative of Sudan's Minister of Information. And joining us from Cambridge in the United Kingdom, Harry Verhoeven, advisor to the IGAD South Sudan Peace Talks and a visiting scholar at Cambridge University. Good to have you both with us, gentlemen. Mr. Rubia Abdal'Aati, let me start with you then. So you heard our introduction there, how much the Sudanese people are suffering through all of this. They say they are fed up with the subsidy cuts, the hike in prices. Almost half the population are living below the poverty line. And the response, the immediate response from the government has been to arrest opposition politicians and to shut down newspapers. Is this really the right response?
Yes, actually, this civil disobedience that declared by unknown people or unknown political parties, they not get any response from our people. I think now everything is going normal in our country. There is no government departments stopped from work, and the people, even in private sector, they are continuing their works, and I don't think that there is any sign of any civil disobedience in the streets, whether in Khartoum, the capital, or in any of the states.
If you say that everything is normal and there hasn't been much of a response, there hasn't been much in the way of civil disobedience, why the need to shut down newspapers? Do you not want people to know about it?
Actually, as we know that we have a lot of laws. We have the Act of Security, National Security, and we have the Act of, the criminal law, and we have also the Act that organizing press and freedom. There is some intersections and interventions between all these laws. I don't think that there is any, action which will be taken against newspapers if these newspapers are following the laws. Sometimes,
all right. So if they're following the laws, then why were they shut down? Why were newspapers confiscated? Why were the printing presses shut down?
This is an authority. This is an authority for the executive organs in our country. There is executive organs that they are responsible of implementation of law. And if the newspaper having any they have any loss, or they don't agree with what action taken against them, they can go to the court. And we have a case of a Tayar newspaper that a Tayar newspaper has been shut, and they actually submit this case to the Constitutional Court, and after that the Constitutional Court issued the decree, and the Tayar newspaper has been come back again and issued. And I think that this is actually the procedure which is now followed in our country. There is no penalty, there is no crime unless there is law organizing.
Harry Verhoeven, how do you see all of this developing, and why now? Why are we seeing these particular kinds of protests in Sudan at this particular time?
Well, I think Dr. Rubia is right in pointing out that the civil disobedience call by the opposition and by the activists has not been very successful, in the sense that most people do seem to be going to work and to be carrying on with their business. But that should certainly not lead us to conclude that somehow people are not absolutely fed up and deeply aggrieved with what has been happening, particularly over the last couple of years, but in many ways essentially since 1989, when this government came to power. And the root issue really is this: many people have a sense that this government has been in power for 27 years, has dramatically mismanaged the economy. Remember that Sudan enjoyed an oil boom between 1999 and 2011, in which more than $30 billion accrued to government coffers, government of Khartoum. And people want to know what happened to that money, because the argument always was that this money that came from the oil was going to be used to develop other sectors of the economy, to buttress social services, to develop industries, to revolutionize agriculture, etc. Yet since the loss of the South in July 2011 and the departure of 3/4 of the oil, we've actually seen a deepening economic crisis that the country seems unable to extract itself from. So that really is why people are fed up, and why over the last 5 years we've seen repeated instances of civil unrest, of protests in Khartoum, as well as, of course, continuing violence on the edges of the state, in Darfur, in South Kordofan, and in Blue Nile. That's what this is really about.
All right, we want to welcome our third guest who's able to join us now, also in Khartoum, Ahmed Mahmoud, who is a Sudanese activist, filmmaker, and participant in this civil disobedience protest that's been taking place in Sudan over the last 3 days. So I want to get your point of view on this. How much do you think you have accomplished here? Because both of the two guests that we've been speaking to, they both agree on one thing, that it hasn't really had much of an impact at this point. Your response to that?
Well, honestly, to be honest, I mean, the fact that only today 5 different newspapers have been seized from publishing is just an indicator of the fact that the civil disobedience, those 3 days, accomplished a great thing. I mean, the newspapers, five newspapers who wrote about this event, they were seized from publishing, and another newspaper, I think yesterday or the day before, were also seized. And the fact that the newspapers that were allowed to speak about the event, they all had the exact same headline, something scripted probably by NIS or a different body. But the fact that almost everyone I know who has a 9-to-5 job basically did not go to work for 3 days, and the numbers, the sheer numbers of thousands of people on those different Facebook groups and the Twitter hashtag being trending for consecutive 3 days, these are all indicators that this actually accomplished what we were going for, and the fact that people got together behind one goal, and it's for the government to revert from these policies, these economic policies that affected our medicine prices and fuel prices and food prices. They need to revert from that.
Well, let's come back to Rabia Abdal'Ati on this then. What is the government actually doing to address the fundamental problems in the country right now, the economic problems, the reason why people have responded the way they have?
You know, actually, I'm very surprised that your guest here in Khartoum is saying that there is, a lot of people actually they are implementing this civil disobedience. I don't see any sign, whether in the governmental departments or in the private sector or even in the streets.
All right. Well, we can agree to disagree on how effective that's been. We just showed some pictures earlier that showed empty streets in Khartoum. But the question I'm asking you is what the government is actually doing to address the economic problems.
If you please let me complete. If you please let me complete. You didn't actually the guest in Khartoum here, he said each and everything what he wants to say. But
right, but I'm asking you a question about the economic problems.
Why you are interrupting me?
Because you're not answering my question, sir.
The economic problem, yes, I am also speaking about the economical problem after the secession of the South. As you know that Sudan government lost more than 75% of the revenue of petrol, and also there is sanctions against Sudan since the year 1989 up to now. Sanctions against Sudan government and against Sudan people. In spite of this, actually, that war erupted in the south also deprived Sudan government from that fees that actually gained from the petrol of the south through the pipeline. And a lot of problems, economical problems in our country that led the government and the financial sector to take these arrangements, and these arrangements actually has been taken, and we think that this austerity also plan, which declared by our government, they will reduce 10% of the expenses of the government, and also there is a subsidy which will be given to more than 700,000 people, which will be a subsidy in cash to the poor people, and so many other arrangements has been taken, and even the prices of electricity not affecting the poor, that those who are consuming less than 400 kilowatts. Still the subsidy of electricity cost is implemented for poor people in our country. These are the main factors and the main reasons of taking these measures that declared before, and we think that these measures will shortly lead to the improvement of the economy in the year 2017.
Harry Verhoeven, what's your view on that? Is the government in Sudan on top of this?
Well, the problem is as follows, of course. There's no question that the economy needs to be reformed, and that some of these subsidies need to be reformed, because hitherto they've been extraordinarily inefficient. They've been very prone to abuse, to corruption, to politicization, etc. So there's no question that needs to be reformed. But I think what many people have big questions about is how fair this reform really is, whilst they feel that they are being very harshly hit by this, but they see many of the people who've been benefiting from the oil money that I was describing earlier, getting away with essentially not paying their fair share at all. And so this is the real question, and the reason why people are so unhappy is because they feel that the strongest shoulders are not carrying the greatest burden, not today and not in the past. Because the real question is, of course, not was there a loss of revenue in 2011. There certainly was, but the government had a lot of time to plan for this. It had billions of dollars at its disposal in the interim period between 1999 and 2011. For a long time, the Sudanese people were told that this money was well spent, that it was going to build up other productive sectors of the economy so as to weather the storm in case the South did decide to go. Yet, unfortunately, when the South declared its independence and left, it turned out there was no plan whatsoever. And I think this is what makes people so angry. Some people have done very well under this government, made an extraordinary amount of money, but a lot of this money has been taken out of the country, whilst many other people are left and stuck inside Sudan and are now having to carry the burden of economic adjustment. And that's, of course, the fundamental problem. And that's why, even if these protests subside and perhaps are crushed, you will see them coming up over and over and over again until these fundamental issues are really addressed.
Ahmed Mahmoud, if I want to turn to you on this, then what is the ultimate goal of your movement here? What are you, in the end, trying to achieve with this civil disobedience protests?
Well, to be honest, it's too early to speak about goals of a movement, because the movement, this has come as a surprise for many people, including myself, and a lot of people have not anticipated this. But the fact that people have come together and are demanding certain goals, and the government, Rabia Abdul'Aati was sort of interruptions. I have personal friends who have been arrested from their homes for things that they shared on Facebook in the past 3 days. People who have been admins of certain Facebook groups have been arrested also. Akram Ahmed, they have been missing for 3 days now. I say arrested, but in fact they were abducted because they haven't been presented to a court of law. They haven't done anything wrong. They haven't been outside protesting. They have been basically demanding and asking people to stay at their homes for 3 days. And Rabia Abdul'Aati's government is ruthlessly cracking down on such peaceful civil disobedience, and then they want us to hear lies.
Mr. Abdal'Aati, your response to that?
Yeah, actually, still I am very surprised for what said by Mr. Ahmed. Actually, there is no sign here for this civil disobedience. Everything is going as normal as it is and as it was. And there is nothing now. There is nothing. Everything is okay. I surprised. This is from where? The government actually work and procedure is going as it is, and the private sector also enterprises and companies also. The traffic even in the streets is very normal also, and I don't think that there is any sign for this civil disobedience which Mr. Ahmed is speaking about. Therefore, I think now we should wait for tomorrow, for after tomorrow, for 1 month, for 3 months. I don't think that there is nothing. This is, I can call it, much cry little wool.
Ahmed Mahmoud, everything is okay. There's no problem. Your response.
All right. Again, just let me just remind you again that there are people who are arrested by the NISS as we're speaking now. There is Abdal'Aati Ahmed, who was an admin of one of the groups calling for the civil disobedience. There is Akram Ahmed, an activist from Durman, and a member of a civil resistance movement called Grifna. Akram Ahmed, he was arrested from his home. They have been missing for 3 days. There are other people that you can basically go on Google now and Google them. And I don't know why Mr. Abdal'Aati is claiming that I'm lying. I'm not lying. This is real. You can speak to their families. Their families have been speaking every day about their sons since this has started. Their sons has not returned home. And just the fact that the newspaper that was seized from publishing 2 days ago, I mean, this is the age of the internet. You seize a newspaper, but we get it by the evening online. The newspaper basically published a story about how the markets were empty on Sunday.
All right.
Yes, the markets are full today because today is Tuesday, but the civil disobedience took place on Sunday, Monday, and Monday, and Tuesday, and it has been successful.
I want to ask you though about
empty markets, empty streets has been seized.
I want to ask you, Ahmed Mahmoud, about the economic situation in Sudan right now. What is daily life like for people in Sudan? Have things gotten to a point where they have nothing to lose now?
Well, it has been going since 2013, since these structural adjustments have been presented heavily like this, and every year the dollar rate just keeps rising up and up, and the living expenses keep rising up and up with it. And they have been speaking a lot about making compensations for government employees and whatnot, but is it really enough? They're talking about really margin numbers here, and the fact that the bread keep rising, the milk keep rising, the essential food are rising day by day, and people are being fed up, and the fact that thousands of people have decided that they are going to take this action, civil disobedience, stay home and not go to their jobs and risk their jobs, this tells you that this is a point of no return, basically.
Harry Verhoeven, I know Ahmed talked about this a little bit earlier, but how much of a role has social media played in all of this? in getting information out, in fostering communication, particularly among the disaffected youth in Sudan?
Well, social media clearly matters a great deal indeed for many young people, particularly in Khartoum, and it facilitates interaction between people inside the country and people outside, whether in the Sudanese diaspora, in the Gulf or in the UK or in the United States, or of course vis-a-vis academics like myself or journalists or people who work for human rights organizations. So in that sense, it has been important. But of course, it's equally important to think about all those people who do not have access to social media, who perhaps are not active on Twitter or on Facebook, but are actually most of the time sharing the brunt of these adjustment measures and, more importantly, of the long-term economic crisis that we're facing. I mean, the people who are not going to be on this show are, of course, the 70% of Sudanese people who live in rural areas, which remain by far the poorest areas, the areas deprived of most social services and of most productive investment, and where the situation is much harder felt than it is in Khartoum. Of course, one feels very strongly for those in Khartoum who are affected, for example, by hikes in the prices of meat and milk, etc. But the truth is that in the Sudanese countryside, many people go on one meal every 2 days. And this has been going on for many years in places like Kordofan, in places like Blue Nile, in places like Eastern Sudan, etc. And so I return to my fundamental point, which is to say that, yes, the Sudanese economy has been harmed by US sanctions. There is no question about it. But I think what really should be put on trial is the overall mismanagement of Sudan's resources since 1989 by this government. Sudan is not destined to be a poor country. It has an extraordinary amount of resources. It had a very educated population, a very capable and able and resilient population. Yet if today it is one of the poorest countries in the world, one should ask oneself, why is that? And why are so many people back against the wall, whether they're participating in civil disobedience or not? And unfortunately, a lot of the debate is missing out on these far more structural features and focusing on how many people are in the streets or how many people are not in the streets. And that's really missing out on what really matters.
Let's put that then to Rubia Abdul'Ati. There's plenty of resources and wealth to go around in Sudan. The problem is the government's continued mismanagement of it. What's your response to that?
It is not like that. It is not only mismanagement. Actually, as you know, that since 1989, there were sanctions against Sudan, and these sanctions affected the economy, and this affection to the economy, was still very harmful to the economy, very harmful to the people, very harmful to the health services, educational services, and also affected the prosperity of our people. If we look to the time of the petrol before secession of the South, that the growth of the economy was visible at that time, and people at that time, since the year 2005 up to 2011, they really lived prosperity and luxurious life during this period before the secession of the South. Really, what happened and the reason for this economical package declared by the Minister of Finance is due to the loss of the revenue of the petrol, and also due to the sanctions that implemented against Sudan from the United States of America and other European countries.
Ahmed Mahmoud, I'll give what's probably going to be the last word to you. How do you see this playing out then? Do you expect more of these kind of protests in Sudan?
Well, first of all, just let me point out that, yeah, maybe Sudan is suffering from sanctions, 27 years old sanctions, but I find it funny that the government still finds funds to fund its war against the Nuba people, against the people in Darfur. They bomb them almost every day. Where does this money come from? Where does the ridiculous amount of salaries that they pay for the parliament people and for their army and for the NISS personnel, where did this come from? These are our resources. They are basically stealing them day by day and feeding their war machine with it and their oppression machine with it. So this talk about sanctions affecting Sudan is really does not compute, basically. And where is this going from? Well, more organizing is going to be taking place. This is just one example of how Sudanese people came together and organized a massive scale civil disobedience. And the coming days are going to prove, the coming months are going to prove that the next is going to be a lot more organized and a lot stronger.
We are going to have to leave it there. We could spend a lot more time talking about this, but unfortunately we are out of time. We've got to get to the latest news. Thanks very much for being with us, all three of you, Rubia, Abdal'Aati, Harry Verhoeven and Ahmed Mahmoud. Thanks very much for being on Inside Story. And thank you for watching. As always, you can see this program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, you can go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter as well. Our handle there, @AJ Inside Story. For me, Hazem Sika, and the whole team here, bye for now. The news is next.